For months on this channel, we have been warning anyone who will listen of the increasing risk and danger to American troops on the ground in Iraq and in Syria, and how we risk having some of our troops pointlessly killed in a mission that we don't need, that could potentially draw us further into a war. We're continuing to move even closer to that situation now. Now, just a little bit of background here. About a week or so ago, one of the many attacks against our troops came in and actually caused a serious wound to an American. And for a while, it appeared that he might be at risk of being killed. And if, as you know, as we've talked many times, if that happens, that crosses a threshold, which will then spur many in the United States to emphatically ask the president to strike targets directly in Iran, because there's the Iran-backed militias in this area primarily that are the cause and the origin of all of these attacks. Now, we've also talked about that a lot of the American responses to these, going all the way back into October, have been basically little pinpricks and haven't done a lot, and definitely haven't deterred anybody, as the attacks just continue on a pace and then periodically spike and to a higher even level than what they had been. Now, Biden finally did pick up the pace a little bit and take a bit of a stronger hit back about on Thursday of this week, when he launched a significant strike into Baghdad itself.
Tonight, the US sending a message to Iran. An American airstrike killing the leader of an Iranian-backed militia in Baghdad. A senior US defense official calling it a precision strike on his vehicle, saying he was actively involved in planning and carrying out attacks against American personnel.
Now, what they didn't say in that report right there, it's not just that it was an Iran-backed militia like some shadowy figure. Folks, this was somebody in the Iraqi security forces. This was a government-recognized entity, and this person was accused by the United States of actively planning and plotting some of these very attacks. Now, we're going to get to that other part here in just a second about how this was someone in the government. But the first reaction was visceral and emphatically angry that the Iraqi government and their prime minister went on national television and said that they're setting in motion a process that's going to get the U.S.-led coalition out of Iraq. He was going to Parliament. He was seeking some votes to try and legally kick us out. Now, can you imagine the ignominy and the humiliation of that? That we're sitting there in a country, allegedly we're there to protect the Iraqi people. We're allegedly there to have this counter ISIS mission. And then the very people that we're supposed to be supporting, number one, some of their people are actually apparently actively working against our troops. But then secondly, they're ready to kick us out. Now, we have said many times that there is no valid mission there for us. But I guess a couple of months back, John Kirby went on television and said, no, to the contrary, it's important.
What is President Biden waiting for? Is he waiting for Americans to be killed before he takes substantive action that will actually give Iran pause about telling its proxies to keep harassing us?
We're not waiting for anything, John. As you just saw over the weekend, we're certainly willing and able to take retaliatory strikes to protect our troops and our facilities, and we'll continue to do that. These groups and the IRGC, the Supreme Leader, they have a choice to make. We're not looking to escalate, but we absolutely have a viable mission in Iraq and Syria to go after ISIS, which is still a viable threat, and we got to make sure that we have the troops and the capabilities to do that.
Now, look, first of all, we got to consider that, look, there's a bigger problem here. Number one, and I'm going to show you this graphically in just a second, it's fiction to suggest that those handful of troops in Baghdad or in Erbil and locked in bases are conducting any kind of effective counter-ISIS mission. ISIS is more a mentality than anything else, and there are still allegedly, depending on who you want to ask, 10 to 30,000 of them scattered throughout various parts of Iraq and in Syria. We're obviously not doing anything to eradicate that number, trying to go after them, because we do periodically conduct these operations. Folks, let me tell you what it's like. It's basically like taking an eyedropper and saying, I'm going to go drain that swimming pool in a rainstorm. You know, you can stick that eyedropper in there and pull out a little bit of water every time. So you succeed in your mission. You did take out a leader. But before you can even take that dropper and empty it, more rain has come in and the pool just stays the same. Every time you take out a leader, folks, we've seen this for decades. There's another one taking his place. There's no shortage of them. And very often the guy that takes his place is even better than the one we took out. So on the face of it, that's not really why we're there. Now, some people want to claim that, well, we're there to keep an eye on Iran. And again, I'm telling you, from a tactical military perspective, those troops don't do anything. Now, I mean, they're base bound. They're on bases in Baghdad, Erbil, and maybe a couple of other places in the region. They don't go and conduct missions actively. The ones in Syria do even less. There's only about 900 of those. So let's just get that fiction off the table. But look, I actually had some sources that had direct access to what's going on in Iraq. And literally just before airtime here, they came back on and they told me that for now, the issue is dead because the Iraqi prime minister, he wanted to kick us out because he was angry. Now, for your knowledge, he's a Shia. And that means that he is tied to Iran, at the government level. This is open. This is not hidden secrets. They actually actively work together each other. As a matter of fact, the Iraqi government sent condolences to the Iranian government when their recent terrorist attack that they had the other day, or when some of their people were assassinated by Israel in Syria. They're very affectionate towards their co-religionists, the Shia religions in Iran. That should be a first red flag. That why are we worrying about protecting basically a Shia-led government in Iraq when that doesn't seem to be very much in our interest, and everybody likes to tell us how Iran is a big problem for us. But the second issue is this person that we took out was a part of their government, their official Iraqi security forces architecture. This is not just some guy that was sneaking around. I mean, this is part of the Iraqi military in a sense. And, you got to wonder how many others are like that. And no one's even asked that question yet, that hang on, the government that we're there to support, one of their members was actually plotting against us and tried to kill Americans. That should be a second red flag, and something that we need to be talking about a lot more openly about. Why do we want to continue having American troops there? So aside from the operational issue, there's also the strategic and political issue. Why are we trying to prop up a government that is very friendly to Iran when you won't claim with the other hand that Iran is a bad person? But then there's a bigger issue too, and that is our strategic interest and the risk of a growing war. Now, right now, Secretary Blinken is going throughout the region because there are fears that the Gaza war may engulf the region in a bigger war that we could get sucked into. We beat the drums on that here all the time at Daniel Davis Deep Dive, and we're going to continue to do it until, God willing, there's some action to take to mitigate our risks and not to continue to expand it. But what happens if this escalates further? Now, we've also seen in the past what they call red on or green on blue attacks, where the people that were supposed to help, and this happened many times in Iraq, then turned on our own troops and ended up killing some of our troops. Now, the Shias are very angry right now. And the reason why this is dead, according to my sources in Baghdad, that it's dead right now is because the Kurdish and the Sunni blocs in parliament had enough votes and they blocked the vote. But the Shia bloc and the Shia prime minister wanted to pass that to get us kicked out of there. So they're very angry. So now that politically they just got frustrated. They saw on the ground that one of their members was killed. What do you think the chances are that they're going to do nothing? They're going to say, darn it, well, we didn't have the votes. I guess we'll try to get them next year. I think that the chances are much higher than I'm comfortable that they're going to take other measures, and that our troops on the ground now are not just at risk of some kind of random Iran-backed militia that, are rebel groups, so to speak, but maybe the very people that we're in the barracks with. Maybe the very people that we do business with, you just don't know. And I can assure you, I guarantee you that the trust factor is way frayed from what it might have been in the past. And our guys are looking over their shoulders and they're checking, to make sure that they're not alone. I don't have any personal knowledge of this, but I know from personal experience that we're very careful of that in a normal case. I can imagine now that we know that one of the guys that was supposed to be on our side was actually trying to take us out, that trust is going to be eroded even further. Moreover, we basically conducted an assassination operation and took out this person in Baghdad, in their capital city, no matter what the government there wanted to do. And now then the risk of retaliation grows. So as we've also recently talked about, our ally Israel has took out an assassination operation in Beirut against a Hamas person, in Syria against a leading Iranian figure, and everybody's vowing revenge for all of those. And I can assure you, somebody's going to say they're going to vow revenge for the person that we just assassinated here. Now then you see that there is renewed threat. This is just today, by the way, that the U.S. renews protection for Secretary of State Pompeo and several of his aides, because they're the ones that are being potentially targeted. Now, that's just one we know about, because those were high-profile people that we took out there. And now then, you can be assured that the other side is going to try to do the same thing. Now, imagine if I said that there's a big risk that if an American troop in Iraq or Syria were killed, that we could potentially have require a big pressure on the president to go and strike in Iran. Now, just imagine if it's Mike Pompeo or somebody of that stature, a former Secretary of State, suddenly dies in a mysterious accident or something. You got to know that people are going to lose their minds about saying, now that it's not just a couple of missiles here and there. We had on our show yesterday, we showed you that Jack Keane is just emphatic about wanting to attack Iran right now, even before any Americans have been killed. Just imagine the pressure he could bring. Lindsey Graham, Bolton, Pompeo himself has been a big advocate of this. Now imagine what those folks would do if a high-profile American were actually assassinated. We could be in a war like that, folks, absolutely like that. And, this fiction that John Kirby said last month about there being an enduring ISIS mission, let me show you just graphically how nonsensical that is. Now, I served on the ground in Iraq, and so I've been involved in some of these operations here. That's me in late 2008, I believe it was, and I'm the second from the right there. And these are some of the Iraqi policemen that our group was tasked with training. And we would take them on training operations all over the country there. And I'm not quite that big anymore, by the way. And actually, a lot of that is a lot of the gear. That's about the 80 pounds of gear you had to have on every time you walked outside of the gear, the wire, or if you got out of your vehicle, because of the IED and the sniper risk. So that was always an ever-present issue there, and our guys still have that same requirement today. But one of the missions that we did was up on the Iran-Iraq border, and I'm going to ask Gary to show up the screen here. This is a Google Earth. This little complex here is right on the Iran-Iraq border that we did some training. That's the border right there. It runs down that riverbed. So we've done some training. Now, let me back up a little bit here so you can kind of see this miles and miles and miles of trackless desert. You're going to see Baghdad pop up on the left here. That's hours and hours of driving across just trackless desert. And then you see how big it goes out to. There's Iraq on the left, Iran on the right. That's one tiny dot on the map. Okay. That's when I was actually outside the wire, and we could see, I don't know, a couple hundred meters either side of the truck. We could see some, through our sights, maybe we could see 2 or 3 kilometers straight ahead. That's about it. That's all we could see. And unless you go and investigate somewhere, you can't do anything. So if you're talking about now a couple of dots on the map where we have troops there, they're not doing any kind of counter ISIS mission. And again, for context, just think we had, I think, somewhere around 189,000, maybe somewhere close to 200,000 troops in Iraq at the height of that surge in the 2006, 2007 to 2008 area. We had 150,000 U.S. and NATO troops in Afghanistan. And I've talked ad nauseum about how that was just a drop in the bucket. That's when we have massive numbers of troops, of aircraft, of fighter helicopters, artillery, ship, cruise missiles. I mean, everything in the world. And even that, as we saw graphically portrayed in Afghanistan, was not enough to quell the insurgency. So we just need to get the fiction right off the table. We're not doing anything to counter ISIS. They haven't changed any in the last several years we've been there. We're just there. We're points of vulnerability for our country, places that could get us sucked into a war that's not of our interest, that we almost certainly could not win, but could lose. Listen to me carefully. I'm telling you, there is no gain for our country. I don't care anybody that says, no, we can't leave there, because it doesn't matter what you fill in the blank with. We can leave there. We should leave there. We should do it quickly. And look, if there's one more of these kinds of attacks, the public sentiment in Iraq could rise up so that even the Kurds and the Sunnis are not able to block that in parliament. And then we could unceremoniously be kicked out of Iraq. Can you imagine the humiliation of that? Not only did we not leave when we had the chance, did we not do what's in our national interest, we waited until we were humiliated and kicked out of Iraq by the government there that we were allegedly there to protect and to help in this counter-ISIS mission. Let's don't let that happen, folks. Let's don't let our country get sucked into a war. Let's don't let any of our people get assassinated because of dumb things that we're doing that aren't helping American national interest. Everything that we do related to the military should only be done if it improves American national security. If it doesn't, then we need to not do it and do something else. Lead with diplomacy. Lead with humanitarian assistance. Anything else. Not with military if it's going to undermine our security and potentially get Americans killed in the process. Because I'm here to tell you, if we thought the Iraq war was bad, and it was, if we get sucked into a war in the Middle East against Iran, it will be so much worse than you think. And all of these big, proud guys who beat their chest and talk about how, yeah, we're going to show Iran and we're going to be tough to them, they have no clue what's going to happen after the bombs drop. See, they want to tell you, they want to imply that Iran is just a paper tiger and they would just shrivel and stop the first time some bombs hit. But for God's sake, we've got so much experience on the ground that shows that that doesn't work that way. If anyone had any doubts, just look at what's happening right now in Hamas and Israel. They keep getting pounded heavily over and over, and they don't quit. They just keep going. And the risk of war in Hezbollah in Lebanon is rising. The possibility of Iran coming in. You already have the Houthis down in the Red Sea. Everywhere you want to look, there's the risk of war. This is the time, folks. This is the time right now on the 6th of June, 2024. There is no war that we're sucked into yet. We have the chance at this moment to back out of this wisely, to protect our flanks, to get our troops out of harm's way, redeploy them to places they're more protected and less vulnerable to any of these Iran-backed groups. Get our troops out of Iraq. Let's do it responsibly. Let's do it in synchronization, so it's not this willy-nilly run dash to the exit like we did in Afghanistan. It can be done right, and it needs to be done, but it needs to be done quickly. We need to focus on this and not wait until we're either kicked out or one of our troops is killed and we get plunged into a war. Once that happens, all bets are off. That's your deep dive for you today. We got some great shows for you next week, and I hope you'll join us. We're going to be talking some more about the Russia-Ukraine war, more on the Israeli situation here, more on anything that develops over the weekend. You can count on us because we're going to be here to give you all the information you need, unintimidated and uncompromised, in bringing you the information you need to make sense of your world. Thanks. Like and subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next week on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.